Now, Hollywood quite understandably loves making sequels because the safest bet a studio can make is just producing more of the same successful thing, right? Well, not all sequels are merely content to just rehash the same hit formula again and again, and sometimes they do something so specifically insane you have to wonder quite what the hell they were thinking. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is Whatculture.com, and these are 10 insane changes movie sequels made. Number 10. Luke and Leia are actually siblings. Star Wars Episode 6 – Return of the Jedi. In the second Star Wars film, The Empire Strikes Back, Princess Leia famously plants a rather passionate lip lock on Luke Skywalker in an attempt to prove to Han Solo that she doesn't love him. Now, this would be all well and good, except for the fact that the sequel Return of the Jedi reveals that Luke and Leia are siblings, making that cheeky kiss seem considerably more disgusting in retrospect. It's even more questionable given that after learning the news, Leia tells Luke, "Somehow I've always known," in turn making the unfortunate implication that Leia knew on some level that she was macking on her brother at the time. In reality, this awkward change is simply the result of George Lucas not sufficiently planning the Star Wars trilogy out, as Luke and Leia weren't intended to be siblings during the production of The Empire Strikes Back. But as widely mocked as the familial twist is, the franchise has weathered it pretty damn well considering. Imagine how social media would react to a movie sequel inadvertently introducing incest in this day and age. Number 9. From a bus to a boat? Speed 2 – Cruise Control. Speed is one of the greatest action films of the 90s, a thrilling white-knuckle spectacle in which LAPD bomb disposal officer Jack attempts to stop a commuter bus from dropping below 50 miles per hour and triggering a bomb planted by a terrorist. Speed's phenomenal box office success ensured that a sequel was fast-tracked into production, and just 3 years later, Speed 2 Cruise Control was released. Though it was unfortunate that Keanu Reeves opted not to return, being switched out for Jason Patric as a new character, what truly killed the sequel was the absolutely deranged decision to slow things down, way down. Rather than simply repeat the bomb on the bus scenario again, perhaps with multiple buses this time, the screenwriters opted to shift the action to a cruise ship. And while a runaway cruise liner is no laughing matter, it nevertheless lacks the frantic urgency of a bus that is rigged to blow, further unaided by the sequel's unintentionally comic low-energy subtitle, Cruise Control. Just rehashing the original concept again would surely have turned out much better than this, and at least not cost Fox an eye-watering $160 million to produce. Number 8. It's randomly a spy movie. Pitch Perfect 3. The first two Pitch Perfect movies delivered exactly what everybody expected. Frothy, silly musical comedy centered around a quirky cast of cappella singers. But in a wildly unexpected break from the formula, Pitch Perfect 3 took a sharp left turn into spy comedy caper territory for a large chunk of its runtime. The musical elements remained, yes, but the story is considerably more outlandish than its predecessors, with the Bellas eventually being reinvented as quasi-secret agents who face off against a mustache-twirling megalomaniacal villain, Fat Amy's criminal father, Fergus. It even culminates in an epic explosion on a boat, which is surely the last thing that anybody expected to see in a pitch-perfect movie of all things. One suspects the filmmakers wanted to make fun of increasingly desperately ridiculous sequels, but without much in the way of accompanying wit or humor, it just, well, felt embarrassingly flat. Number 7. Steve Trevor returns in deeply problematic fashion. Wonder Woman 1984. When it was first announced that Wonder Woman's love interest Steve Trevor would be returning in the sequel despite heroically dying in the first film, fans were rather intrigued to see how writer-director Patty Jenkins would pull it off. Ultimately, Steve is resurrected after Diana makes a wish with the Dreamstone. And while it would have been absolutely fine and dandy for Steve to just materialize out of thin air, Jenkins misguidedly made the whole scenario twistedly problematic. As it turns out, Steve is instead brought back to life in the body of another man. And given that Diana and Steve appear to have sex after this, it opens up a whole unpleasant can of worms about consent and what happened to the man's consciousness while his body was effectively being hijacked. Jenkins naturally attempted to downplay the criticisms, but considering it could have easily been avoided by simply having Steve come back to life out of nowhere, it felt like Jenkins truly set herself up to fail with a totally unnecessary controversy. It's not even the worst thing in the movie, but it is perhaps the most needlessly gross subplot in any major film from recent years. Number 6. Nunchucks become sausages. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 – The Secret of the Ooze. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 – The Secret of the Ooze is considerably goofier and more cartoonish than its grittier predecessor, likely in an attempt to combat complaints that the first film was a bit too edgy and in turn maximize the potential box office returns with family audiences. As such, the sequel's approach to violence was considerably toned down, and that was perhaps best exemplified by a memorable sequence at the start of the movie where Michelangelo fights with sausage links instead of nunchucks. This was in part a reaction to the first film being cut in the UK to remove nunchucks and other offensive weapons, with the filmmakers filmmakers understandably assuming that something as silly as sausage nunchucks would be considerably more palatable to the trigger-happy senses. Ironically though, the UK's BBFC ended up cutting the sausages from the sequel as well, with the hilariously patronising non-logic that the average child wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the sausages and actual nunchucks. Number 5. Macys' mother is herself? Jurassic World Dominion. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom was a boatload of crazy in its own right, namely when it introduced human cloning to the franchise by revealing that young Macy Lockwood was a clone of Benjamin Lockwood's daughter Charlotte. But because this apparently wasn't strange and unnecessary enough of a plotline for a Jurassic Park movie, the recent follow-up Jurassic World Dominion gave Macy's origin story a quasi-retcon that somehow went even more unhinged. In the film, Dr. Wu explains to Macy that she wasn't only Charlotte's clone, but Charlotte also actually gave birth to Macy via asexual conception, effectively making Macy both Charlotte's clone and daughter. It's a completely bizarre, head-scratching revelation that only saddles poor Macy with more character baggage that, even more bafflingly, doesn't have any sort of substantial payoff by the film's end. Making Macy a clone was surely odd enough, but randomly giving her a convoluted new origin story where Charlotte gave birth to her own clone? I mean, what's the end point here? Who was this for? Number 4. From slapstick violence to brutal violence, Home Alone 2: Lost in New York. The first Home Alone was a phenomenal success, primarily due to the fun of watching young Macaulay Culkin outsmart two dim-witted thieves with an array of ingenious traps. Though we as viewers relished to see Harry and Marv get repeatedly fooled by Kevin, the level of violence largely remained within the bounds of slapstick territory. And while the sequel largely followed the same formula, director Chris Columbus made one notable change outside of the new setting, and that was majorly upping the ante of violence on display. There's a markedly meaner streak to Kevin's traps in Home Alone 2, and it's poor Marv who gets the wince-inducing brunt of it. He's hit in the head with bricks 4 times, suffers a nasty electrocution, falls large distances numerous times, and is hit by many other objects. He would have been dead several times over is what we're trying to say. And this isn't to say that Home Alone 2's violence isn't funny, because it definitely is, but the playful pratfalls of the first film are largely substituted out for genuinely gnarly impact shots like we rarely subjected to in family-friendly cinema. It certainly didn't hurt the sequel's popularity any though. Number 3. Time travel and humpback whales. Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Star Trek III: The Search for Spock resurrected Spock through rather silly circumstances, but the fourth film said "hold my beer" and took things to a whole level of insanity. Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home is most commonly remembered as the one with the whales, because the plot revolves around, wait for it, the Enterprise crew traveling 300 years back to 1986 to locate 2 humpback whales which can respond to an alien probe signal and reverse its destructive effects on Earth. Yep. A film almost certainly written by cocaine, The Voyage Home is nevertheless an undeniably inventive and entertaining Trek sequel, like most even-numbered entries, albeit one that takes the series in a deeply weird direction that could have so easily fallen flat. Number 2. Vanessa was a fembot all along. Austin Powers: The Spy Who Shagged Me. The first Austin Powers film ends with Austin and Vanessa saving the day, getting married and heading off on their honeymoon, but the sequel categorically undoes this happy ending in fittingly absurd fashion. Austin Powers: The Spy Who Shagged Me opens up with Austin and Vanessa still on their honeymoon, just as Vanessa is revealed to have been a murderous fembot all along and being controlled by Dr. Evil. After attacking Austin, she self-destructs, leaving Austin momentarily distraught before euphorically realizing that he's single once more. It's of course played 110% for laughs, but still comes as a genuine surprise considering how legitimately great Myers and Hurley's chemistry was in the first film, and that audiences expected to see them together throughout this sequel. It's a great gag though, so perfectly satirizes the James Bond franchise's revolving door policy for female characters. Further in that vein, Hurley was replaced as Austin's love interest by Heather Graham's Felicity Shagwell for the rest of the film. And number 1, this time it's personal. Jaws: The Revenge. Because the third Jaws film going the 3D route apparently wasn't daft enough, Jaws: The Revenge decided to make the killer great white shark actually sentient, implying that it targeted the Brody family in an act of revenge for their prior shark-killing actions. The Revenge also popularized the infamous tagline, "This time it's personal," which might have worked were the film positioned as a campy, tongue-in-cheek comedy, but as a serious attempt at a horror movie, absolutely not. It was quite a leap from the more straight-laced terror of the first 3 films, and silly enough that the movie's novelization attempted to rationalize the shark's vengeance quest as, get this, the result of a voodoo curse placed on it by a witch doctor who has a bone to pick with the Brody family. Oh yes, that actually happened. But the movie itself makes no inference to this and simply decides to have the shark intentionally target those who killed its forebears. As the plot of a sequel to a film nominated for the Best Picture Oscar, that is especially demented.